Let's listen in.
Spirit will endure. She has been our longest ever reigning monarch. It's an extraordinary achievement to have presided with such dignity and grace for 70 years. Her life of service stretched beyond most of our living memories. In return, she was loved and admired by the people in the United Kingdom and all around the world. She has been a personal inspiration to me and to many Britons. Her devotion to duty is an example to us all. Earlier this week, at 96, she remained determined to carry out her duties as she appointed me as her 15th Prime Minister. Throughout her life, she's visited more than 100 countries, and she has touched the lives of millions around the world. In the difficult days ahead, we will come together with our friends across the United Kingdom, the Commonwealth and the world to celebrate her extraordinary lifetime of service. It is a day of great loss, but Queen Elizabeth II leaves a great legacy. Today the crown passes, as it has done for more than 1,000 years, to our new monarch, our new head of state, His Majesty King Charles III. With the King's family, we mourn the loss of his mother, and as we mourn, we must come together as a people to support him, to help him bear the awesome responsibility that he now carries for us all. We offer him our loyalty and devotion, just as his mother devoted so much to so many for so long. And with the passing of the second Elizabethan age, we usher in a new era in the magnificent history of our great country, exactly as Her Majesty would have wished, by saying the words, "God save the King."
Okay, that was the newly elected Prime Minister, Liz Truss, just explaining, or rather speaking and reflecting on the life of Queen Elizabeth II, saying that she was devoted to her duty and determined to carry out her duties, how she touched the lives of millions and just carrying out extraordinary service, and she leaves a great legacy. I want to bring in our UK correspondent, Ollie Barrett. Ollie, I can only imagine what's happening in the UK at the moment. It's really an end of an era with the passing of Queen Elizabeth II.
It absolutely is, and I'm at Windsor Castle, where the Queen will eventually, by the way, be buried, and where she spent so much of her recent years. She's really come to see Windsor Castle as her main home, particularly in the years in which her health has been deteriorating. And what you're seeing behind me is a lot of people walking up to Windsor Castle to lay their tributes, to pay their respects, just to stand there and have a think about what has just happened. We're seeing similar at Buckingham Palace in central London, crowds gathering there. We're seeing similar at Balmoral Castle in Scotland as well, where the Queen has died. It is going to be a huge moment for this country. We have obviously never really seen anything like this before. The vast majority of the British people have only ever known the Queen as their head of state. They don't know what this is like. One other thing, just to update you on for the last few moments, is that we have a statement from Prince Charles, I want to call him, but it now is a statement from the King. A statement from His Majesty the King at the time of the Queen's death, says Buckingham Palace. He says, "The death of my beloved mother, Her Majesty the Queen, is a moment of the greatest sadness for me and all members of my family. We mourn profoundly the passing of a cherished sovereign and a much-loved mother. I know her loss will be deeply felt throughout the country, the realms and the Commonwealth, and by countless people around the world." He says, "During this period of mourning and change," note that word change there, "my family and I will be comforted and sustained by our knowledge of the respect and deep affection in which the Queen was so widely held." Also worth pointing out that the word Commonwealth is mentioned in that statement. It was so important, the Commonwealth, to the Queen. Prince Charles knows that. Prince William as well knows that very well. And so the Commonwealth, I think, is going to be absolutely front and centre in the role now that we see King Charles and Prince William take on as the Queen has passed at the age of 96. And those words from Liz Truss outside Downing Street, difficult for her, obviously, to get the tone right. She's only been Prime Minister for 2 days. 2 days ago, she was in Balmoral meeting the Queen for that handover of power from Boris Johnson to Liz Truss. And we did see those photographs of the Queen at that point at Balmoral. She did look frail, a lot of people remarked, but we knew that she was 96 years old, and we knew that, and we now have evidence for the fact that right until the very end, she was keen to carry out as much of those public duties as she possibly could, even though in recent months they've been significantly scaled back.
Certainly. I mean, this is what the newly elected Prime Minister Liz Truss spoke about, how she was devoted till the very end. But Ali, I want to speak about the statement. It says a statement from His Majesty the King at the time of the Queen's death. And many are probably wondering why he is now the King. But maybe you can just tell us how he has immediately ascended to the throne and he has now become King.
Yeah, essentially, over the next few days, there will actually be some procedural elements which will cement all of that. But as soon as the Queen died, as the heir to the throne, he became King Charles automatically and immediately. So he's taken on that role. We will hear from him at some point. We don't know yet whether that will be tonight. In the big plan that's been put together over many decades about how these next days would unfold, it had been imagined that the heir to the throne, assuming that would be Prince Charles, then King Charles, would give a statement around 6 p.m. local time in the evening. Well, that was not far off when the news was actually announced. So it may be that we hear from the King, the new King, tomorrow on Friday instead of today on Thursday. But it could also be that we hear from him today, this evening. And again, he will have to judge the tone right, and he'll need to mark the passing of his mother, but also the changing of their roles. And again, going back to that word change in that statement, being aware that this is a real change. The Queen has been on the throne for 70 years. As I say, most Brits have known nothing else. And so the incoming monarch, King Charles, as he's now known and as he now is, he has a significant job to do. The polling has always suggested he's less popular than his mother. That may well change over the course of the next couple of weeks and the next couple of months and or years. We don't know. And that's the other thing about this event, is that the UK really has never seen anything like this. It's never seen a monarch who's reigned for so long passing on, and so it's not really something that people can predict in terms of how people react. But as I say, here in Windsor, it's very obvious that what a lot of people are doing who live nearby is just deciding to go to the castle and either lay some flowers or just stand there and have a few thoughts about the Queen or talk to other people who are turning up. It does feel at moments like this that people want to just go out and sometimes be with other people and just reflect on exactly what's happened and, of course, the 7 decades that have gone by.
Certainly, and I must say, it almost sounds like you can hear a pin drop where you are. It's exceptionally quiet, and that probably speaks to the somber mood that is going to be felt in the UK over the next couple of days. Ali, I wanted to ask you and speak to you about how she was the longest reigning monarch and how she leaves behind a legacy, and many might speak very good about her legacy. Many might also speak about how she, the UK colonized a number of countries and how that had serious ramifications and a negative impact on these countries. But maybe just speak about her legacy and you having been in the UK and having lived all of that and experienced all of that.
Yeah, absolutely. The legacy of the monarchy is contested and sometimes controversial, and Prince Charles on recent tours to Canada, for example, has had to reference some of those controversies, and they are still keenly felt controversies by many people around the world. Even here in the UK, the Queen and the royal family are not universally loved, but the polling has suggested for years now that the monarchy is a very popular institution and that the Queen has been a very, very popular head of that institution. I mean, the first point is just to repeat what I already said about that idea that for many people she's just always been there. She's always been their head of state. They've never known anything different. The Commonwealth, again, as I mentioned before, is something that is absolutely vital to the Queen's legacy from her point of view. We know that she absolutely wanted that grouping of nations to be something that was built on and cherished and worked on, and that developed into something bigger in the years ahead rather than being something that fades away. So we're absolutely going to see Prince Charles and Prince William following up on that particular element of her legacy. And then again, really she's just been a figurehead who has been there throughout periods of great change, societal change, but also moments of great change like Brexit, for example, those divisive moments where sometimes people are arguing within their own family about an opinion or other that they feel very differently from other people about. But the Queen is designed to be and is supposed to be apolitical, and she has really performed that part of her task very well. I think many people think you don't really know what the Queen thinks about the issues of the day. And that, again, is something that's going to be interesting to watch with King Charles. He's been a bit more outspoken on a number of issues over the years, particularly with regards to his climate activism, his environmentalism as well. So will he continue to do that, or will he decide that now he's king, he has to take on a slightly different role? So there's lots to look back on in terms of the legacy of the Queen, but now there's also lots potentially to look ahead to when it comes to how the new king deals with some of these issues, how he carries himself, how the monarchy continues to adapt and evolve, because it does continue to adapt and evolve throughout what has been over 70 years, just vast societal change. And many people who have kept a close eye on the Queen during those periods have said that she's always, they say, managed to judge things well. Whenever she gives a speech at Christmas or at a moment of crisis like during the COVID-19 pandemic, people always say she's just judged that perfectly, but she's had to do that as society has really changed very rapidly around her. So I think many people will look back on this 70 years and point to that as one of her achievements.
I want us to speak about what we can expect moving forward, Ali. I'm sure a lot is going to be happening in the next couple of days, but also given the fact that all her children and loved ones were with her at the time of her passing.
That's right. They've very quickly moved to be with her, and that was one of the reasons we knew that this was very serious. The first was that statement that we got from Buckingham Palace. You very rarely get statements about the Queen's health, and so we knew that there was real concern. And then when we heard that Prince Charles and Camilla were racing there from not very far away, but also that William and Harry and Edward and Anne were making their way there as well, we knew that this was a serious moment. And then in terms of what happens in the days ahead, I mean, there are things like flags being lowered to half-mast at places like Windsor Castle, but also around London and government buildings up and down the country. And the plans are now being worked through, which have been rehearsed and worked on for many, many years now. When it comes to what happens next, we will see a lot of King Charles in the next week or so. At some point, the Queen's body will make its way south to London. That will either be on a royal train or on a plane, depending on logistics. When she gets to London, her body will lie in state for a period in Westminster, and some members of the public will be able to go and visit her lying in state. And then she'll have a funeral in around 10 days from now. That's the plan, at Westminster Abbey, and there will be processions through London ahead of that. There'll be other services that take place as well, and as I say, procedural events that really cement that official position now of King Charles in that role. And it's going to be a couple of weeks really of national mourning essentially, and one of the unknowns is what central London and what central Windsor are going to be like at some of those set-piece moments. It is expected that tens and thousands, maybe more, of British people who are in the UK and outside the UK will want to be there for some of those events. It's also expected that tourists who are in this country will want to be there for those events. It's also expected that some people will specifically fly in from overseas to mark this moment and also pay tributes and mourn the passing of Queen Elizabeth II as well. So it really could be that for some of those big events like the funeral, for example, that London and Windsor and other key locations really do fill up with hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people.
Okay, great. Thank you so much for your insights in that comprehensive report. We do appreciate it. We'll be checking in with you a little later. That's our correspondent, Ali Barrett in London.